Hey everybody, Robin here with Oracle Rising. Thank you so much for joining me today on the channel. Hope you guys are all doing wonderful. Wish I could give you all a great big hug. I'm just so happy to see you guys. I can't really see you, but you know what I mean. So today we're going to talk a little bit about shadow work. So shadow work is everybody has that shadow self. It is that aspect of yourself that you're probably a little less than proud of. It is that angry, fearful, nasty, sarcastic, that it's your ugly twin. You know what I mean? So I know a lot of people, they're still afraid of their shadow self. They don't understand the purpose of the shadow self. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a beginner's guide to doing shadow work. I'm not a shadow work expert. I've done my own shadow work. Nightmares. So, there's lots of people that can help you as a guide, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up of something that you can start doing on your own. And you could be going through this on your own, and that's fine. Not everybody needs help to do this journey of shadow work. So your shadow self really needs your love. Your shadow self is part of you. It's kind of, if you want to use an analogy that, if you have children and sometimes your children have tantrums or they're really ill-behaved or whatever, you're not going to stop loving your child just because they were in a bad mood, and this is the same sort of love that you should be showing yourself. Even if that persona has taken front and center, your shadow self to take over to protect you, because that's where your shadow self comes from. They're like, oh, well, you can't handle this right now, so I'm going to come forth with my blazing anger, rudeness, meanness, scorching comments, and protect you, until you can stand up on your own 2 feet. And sometimes the shadow self is a little bit too prevalent, but that's okay. Everybody has to go through their own path. And that's really important to remember too, guys, is not to beat yourself up for something that happened, where maybe you just tore a strip off of somebody and maybe it wasn't a pretty sight, but you know what, it happened. So feel a little less guilty about the mistakes that you've made in the past, and for when your shadow self has come like blazing forward to protect you because you needed to heal. Okay, so I do have 4 points here for you guys to start. And the first one is to notice that your triggers are trying to teach you something. So your triggers are, let's say somebody gets cut off in traffic, and I've seen people have like fantastic meltdowns. You know what I mean? Where they're swearing. I dated somebody very briefly a while ago, and we got cut off in traffic. And he started pursuing this guy, and it was absolutely terrifying. It was so scary. So there's obviously a rage issue to be dealt with by this person. And it was like terrifying. And I can't even, I'm still not quite over it, even though it was probably 25 years ago. But anyway, no, it was longer. But anyway, if the things that people say or do are starting to bother you, if you get that feeling like, oh, I'm just going to snap if that person like snorts one more time, or if they can't close their mouth when they're chewing, there's probably something in your ancient history that set you up to have those triggers. Like maybe it was something that your parents did, or, a despised uncle or something like that. There's always a root of the cause back in time somewhere. And actually, my friend is really good at healing and stuff like that. He's not doing it publicly right now, but he helped me resolve some issues that I had with my dad, because I was patterning some of my behavior after him, and he's not the nicest guy. He has some really explosive behaviors, but it really helped me to understand that how to let things go and how to allow people to follow their own path and forgive people even if they don't deserve it, So there is such a thing as forgiving other people for your own benefit, because holding grudges, it only poisons you. So really look at things that are annoying you as opportunities to learn more about yourself, instead of being able to give somebody a scorching glare, of disgust. You know what I mean? And we've all done it. So, and I'm the queen at it. So anyway, so the second point we have here is to take responsibility for your behavior rather than blaming others. And this is such a good point. And, and a classic one is, well, you made me angry. I didn't make you angry. Your reaction was anger. You can choose to react in so many different ways. So once you become aware of that, you can really take responsibility for it. Like, nobody can make you anything. You can allow your reaction to be anything that you want it to be, and that's like victim blaming. You know what I mean? It is just, it's really inappropriate to have a huge freak out. Like, I grew up with some really angry people. So I was really always made to feel like it was my fault that I got yelled at, or if I got hit or something like that. Well, you made me do it. And I always felt like it was the truth. So it can be very destructive for the person doing it and the person on the other end of it, because you've got somebody, and it's usually somebody innocent, taking responsibility for explosive anger or whatever kind of acts, and you see this in certain cases, where people justify their assault by saying, oh, well, she was wearing a really short skirt, so she deserved it. You know what I mean? She brought that on herself because she had too much to drink. And, that's really, you're probably not on that level. So we're looking at an extreme here. But it just goes way too far, because people are not owning up to their own behavior and accepting it. And that is a really difficult part about shadow work, where you're kind of looking at yourself really under a magnifying glass and saying, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I did really overreact there, or I really need to work on my patience and staying calm and using my words instead of my fist, So there's lots of scenarios out there. I've been through, like I said before, a pretty violent background, and I always was made to feel like it was my fault, that I was the one being hit or whatever else was going on. So really learn to master everything about yourself. And if somebody is blaming you, it's time for you to stand up to them and say, you know what, you need to own that. It is not my fault. And just know that it is not your fault when other people take out their frustration, their anger, any other sort of negative energy upon you. Like if you're having a really hard time with somebody abusing you in any way, please get help, you guys. Please get help. There's lots of help out there for you. And then that other person, they need to get help too. But I'll just move on from there, because that's a really touchy subject. It can be really personal for people, and I know how hard it is to go through it. So, okay, so the third point I have here is to recognize your shadow thoughts with acceptance and learn to dismiss untrue perceptions. Okay, so this is what we like to call the inner saboteur, and I love to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. It's one of my favorite shows in the world, and Benji, I love you, Benji! So anyway, guys, so RuPaul talks a lot about the inner saboteur, and everybody has one, and I'll just give you a quick example of a shadow thought. So, I really struggled with my self-image for a long time. So whenever I got dressed, I would just attack myself in front of the mirror, and I would make myself cry. I would cancel my plans. I would send hateful thoughts to myself. It was really brutal. I would just, I can't go out because my arms look too big. I really, I'm not a fan. I have, sort of, bigger upper arms, right? And people looked at me when I was growing up because I wasn't model thin or whatever, and I was made to feel extremely uncomfortable about my body, blah, 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 blah. But it carried into probably my late 30s, early 40s, and now I'm like, this is what I'm wearing. If you do not like the size of my backside, feel free to not look at it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to impress anybody else, but you know those thoughts that come in and they're just like, who are you kidding in that outfit? Or, oh, you're just so ugly today. Or you're not smart enough to do that. Or you'll never be able to do that. And just this incessant launch after launch after launch of negative thought coming into you. That's your inner saboteur. That's your shadow self. And they're asking for help. And again, I'll go back to that sort of tantrum having child. They really need help. They don't understand how to talk about their feelings yet, especially if you've got a 2-year-old. Yikes. You know what I mean? So you can do this. You can say, well, thank you very much for showing up and sharing your opinion, but I'm going to go ask you to sit down and behave yourself right now, because you know your self-worth. But we believe negative feedback and criticism and input way more than we accept positive input. And I find, I'm not even going to say it's about male or female. You know, if you look at how somebody walks into a room, say you're at a gathering or whatever, you're with a bunch of friends and somebody new comes in, you know, one of your friends, and everybody compliments that person's hair, you know, their cosmetics, their outfit or whatever, and that person rejects every compliment. Oh no, you can't mean it. Oh, this whole thing, no, well, you know, I just kind of slapped it together, instead of saying, oh, thank you, you know, and really allowing that to come in and touch their heart. They're like pushing it back. But you know, if people were to sit there and gossip and say, oh, who is she kidding? Look at the color of her hair. Are you kidding me with those jeans? Where did she get those shoes? 1975? You would believe every negative criticism. Do you know what I mean? So it's time to really start accepting the positive things and canceling negative thoughts about yourself, because this is the body, this is the brain, this is everything about you that your soul chose as a vehicle. So there's a reason for that. This is part of your journey, and you're beautiful and you're wonderful, and you deserve compliments and love and flattery and, you know, camaraderie from yourself, you know? So really learn to dismiss those negative thoughts before they take you away like a freight train. I've been there. I did it for like I'm saying 40 years of my life, you know, and don't hate, you know, learn to, hiccup, learn to really love yourself, because you're worth it. You really are. And I'm not trying to steal somebody's tagline. I really need a sip of tea. Hold on. Okay. All right. So the fourth and final point that I have for you guys on your journey to starting shadow work is to eliminate escapism behavior. So, and this is how people end up with raging addictions, because things get a little bit too much to take. So they're going to start smoking, drinking, drugs, over shopping, gambling, like what else? There's so many addictions, and people just sort of throw themselves into it with a passion instead of dealing with what is going on inside them. And it can get to the point where the escape is no longer the escape, it's the anchor. And trust me, you guys, I've been through all of this too. Like I've alluded to having basically a horrifying childhood, which led into me dating some extremely violent men. Just so you guys know that how bad it was. Like the first guy I ever dated, he actually did time for physically abusing me so badly. And then, of course, I wasn't getting any support. I was only 16, just so you know. I wasn't getting any support from family. You know, I was being really wildly disrespected, you know, being called names and stuff like that. I mean, so I started with all these addictions because I just didn't know what to do, and it took me a long time. I went through a very, very difficult path because I wasn't getting any help from anybody. But anyway, I finally came in and rescued myself later on in life. But I did the drinking. I was a smoker. I was like I said before, I think that was in a different video. Um, did lots of stuff to abuse my body. You know what I mean? Just really never had a clear head, just really was a disaster. And I did all of these things because I didn't know how to cope with the psychological abuse I was getting, the physical abuse I was getting, just the lack of support at home. Like my parents hated me. So I formed this other sort of party persona that would take over, and she was having, I guess, a great time. I don't know, but really inside, I was devastated and I needed help. But, so all these behaviors that I did, they distracted me from my journey. They took me on a much longer path that I needed to go on because I wasn't able to deal with anything. I was pretty young. If I look at a 16-year-old girl right now, I'm like, oh my God, I hope she just looks so young, like any 16-year-old. I hope they're having a better life than I did. But do you know what I mean? So it's really, when the crutch starts to become the problem, there's a bigger problem, So be very careful about what it is that you're doing to soothe yourself instead of dealing with what's going on in your heart, mind, and soul. So just remember that your shadow self needs a hug too. Your shadow is always going to be with you. Your shadow is kind of like, it's kind of like a cranky 2-year-old, you know what I mean? And they need to be enveloped in your love. You know what I mean? So I hope this was a helpful little starter pack for you guys on how to do shadow work. And anyway, yeah, I'm going to go think about that for a little while because that brought up a lot of memories. It's really hard for me to talk about stuff like that because I have to relive it, and I don't ever want to live it again. But I would really want to help you guys on your journey of healing and ascending, so I brought it up. And look at me, I'm doing this white knuckle like, oh. Anyway, I'm gonna go make some tea and hug my dog. So guys, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.